He is the head football coach at TCU. Sonny Dykes joins us, Sikkim 365 Radio at 365 Sports, as they wrapped up their spring on Friday, spring drills, and now focus on the rest of the offseason into what, of course, is fall camp in August. And Coach Dykes, thanks for your time with Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak. Thanks for your time. What did you, in particular, when you make a change like that, and you've moved around, and that's what happens, what did you have to make sure you found out during spring?
Well, biggest thing is you want to try to make sure that you have what you need in terms of players at certain positions. I mean, for us, it starts with quarterback, and we needed to get into it and find out, do we have guys on campus that we think we can play for a championship and win a championship with. And the good thing was we felt like the answer coming out of spring was a definite yes. Was excited about that. That's so important in today's college football world. It's just making sure that you have that guy at that position, that can play at a really high level. And then the second thing is, just getting the buy-in from the players, having an opportunity to sit down with those guys and develop a work ethic, develop a toughness, develop a culture that you feel like you can win with. That's always a big question that you have. Can you capture those guys when you take a job? Sometimes it takes a while, and how quickly are they going to jump on board? And you got to give our players a lot of credit. I think, we had a really good off season. It started for us with Kaz Kazadi, our strength and conditioning coach, and I think he's one of the best in college football. And he did a great job of developing our guys physically, and at the same time, really working hard to develop them mentally, create a kind of a culture in our program of accountability and toughness and hard work. And so, we came out of our 10-week program, felt pretty good about that, rolled into spring ball and see if it carried over to the field. And we were able to get a lot of things taught to our guys. And again, I was really impressed with the way they worked, their attitude and their approach that they had every day. It felt like we had, 15 really good practices, and everybody really worked hard and got better.
Coach, you mentioned the quarterbacks and that you have two that you really like and you feel they can play. I know you didn't name a starter ending spring, but you're going to see how it plays out. Is that kind of an added – I know most of the time you'd like to be able to say, this is sure the guy he's our one, but if you like the two guys, is it an added benefit as a coach in a new job that you get to see how they both respond to being in a competition throughout the summer?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, typically, this is kind of my fourth time to go someplace and to take over a program. And, it's kind of always been the same thing. You have a quarterback competition, when you go someplace, and usually it takes a little longer than you want it to for that to be decided. As I said earlier, fortunately, we've got two guys. I mean, one is Max Duggan, who's played a lot of football for us, really been a 3-year starter around here. And then, Chandler Morris is a guy that we feel like has a lot of potential and, played well in a limited role last year at TCU. So, really excited about both of them. Both of them have some real strengths and some things that they can do. And so it's, I think it's great to have that competition. And what always happens is, you come out of spring ball and you go, well, I think this guy probably has a little bit of a lead. And then typically what happens over the summer is one of them just outworks the other one. And I've seen it happen. I mean, I went to Cal. We recruited Jared Goff. He enrolled early in the spring, and coming out of spring ball, he was our fourth quarterback. And, once about a week into fall camp, he was our third, and then he became our second. And then before long, for our first game, he was our starter and started 3 years and went on to be the first pick in the NFL draft. And so you just don't know who's going to make a move. You don't know which one of the guys is going to work the hardest and which one of the quarterbacks, the players are going to really get behind and believe in. Because a big part of their success is just the players believing in them and having confidence in them. And there's so many little things and nuances and dynamics that go into making that happen. And so the summer's so critical. We'll come out of the summer, get into fall camp and see where they are at that point. And hopefully, about 2 weeks before the first game, we'll be able to name a starter and go from there.
Coach, surrounding those quarterbacks, I know you got a couple of skill guys that are former Temple Wildcats, so just down the road from us, and Jared Wiley and Quentin Johnson. I know that they were limited, injuries came into play during the springtime, but how do you feel about your skill talent surrounding those quarterbacks, and how much of a help will they be in helping whoever the guy is pulling the trigger settle into that spot?
Well, you know how that is. I mean, it's so important to have a great supporting cast. Really, that has so much to do with the success that your quarterback has, is getting comfortable with those guys, not feeling like he doesn't have to do everything himself. It's a great thing when your quarterback has a lot of confidence in the guys he's throwing the ball to or the guy that he's handed it to. It really changes the way they view the game, and they have an opportunity to play with a lot more confidence and a lot less risk. You don't have to take a bunch of chances when you've got guys that can make plays. And so, as you said earlier, Quentin Johnson is one of the best wide receivers, I think, in college football. Had a great year last year, was first team All Big 12. He really worked hard over the spring, thought he got a lot better. Expect big things from him next year. And Jared Wiley was somebody that transferred over from Texas, and we're excited about Jared. We didn't get to see what he could do really this spring. He was limited early and ended up having a surgery, but we anticipate him, being full go when we start back up in August, and really excited about what he can do. Love his tape at Texas and obviously at Temple, and feel like both those guys are going to be really good players for us.
You have a young man in Tomlinson, Hodges Tomlinson, who's a fantastic player. We covered him. We broadcast the games when he was at Midway. How good is, and he played with Tanner Mordecai when he, of course, your quarterback at SMU. How good is he?
You know what? He's really good. I mean, Trey is ultra competitive. Has remarkable explosiveness and change of direction. He's one of those guys that just loves to play football. He's got a ton of confidence. He has one of the most important things a corner can have, and that's a short memory. He's one of those kids, if he gives up a play, he doesn't care. He comes right back and competes just as hard or harder the next play. And I think he's got a chance to be a really, really good football player. I mean, he's just got a great skill set. And as I said, the thing I love about him is just, he plays with a chip on his shoulder. You're going to get the very best out of him every single day. And that's about the most important thing you can say about a football player, is he's going to go out there and give it everything he has every day. And so he's very, very talented. Expect big things from him, and I think he has a chance to have a really good year this year.
What is it, a short memory, or is it just so much confidence in his ability he figures out what he did so wrong so quickly?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think that's a position you can't be scared. I mean, you're going to give up some plays. I don't care who you are. I mean, you're going to give up some plays occasionally at that spot, and Trey doesn't care. I mean, he understands that he's also going to make a bunch more because he's going to play very aggressive. And so there's a fine line there. Sometimes corners play on top, never give up big plays, but Trey's not one of those guys that wants to do that. I mean, he wants to challenge. He doesn't want to give up any plays. He doesn't want to give up a 3-yard completion or a 30-yard completion. And so he plays so aggressive. I think it really changes the way that you have to attack them, when you're playing against them. I know when I was at SMU, we would play TCU and Trey was playing corner, and you had to do some things differently when you tried to attack him, just because he was going to be there and challenging every single throw. And those kind of guys are great to have on your defense. I mean, they really change the mentality. They help everybody around them play aggressively and play with confidence.
Coach, it was obviously a whirlwind towards the end of last year, the whole transition. Now you've got, about 5 months under your belt. You've seen recruiting classes signed, and the portal's been open, and spring ball's now closed. Just what have these first few months been like, and do you feel, completely settled in at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I think the number one thing you have to do is you got to win the players over. I mean, you got to get the players believing in your vision for the program. As I said earlier, I mean, so much of that is strength and conditioning in your program. And do those guys believe in that? Do they believe in the nutrition program? Do they believe in the recovery program? All the things that are going to allow them to maximize their talent. And I think those guys have really bought into that. For us, nutrition is one of the things that's really critical to helping keep us, strong as a program. It helps guys recover. I think it helps their mental frame of mind. I think it does so much for guys when they're eating the right things and putting the right things in their body. It allows them to recover better, allows them to get bigger, stronger, faster. Obviously, I think it keeps them safe and healthy. And so, those guys have really bought into that part of our program. And so it begins there because, it's hard to get to point B if you really don't have that buy-in out of your players. And again, a big part of that's your strength staff and what they're selling every single day in the weight room and their program. And then, the way that you interact with your players every day. It's, it's so important in today's college football that they know you care about them off the field just as much or more than you do on the field. And so, you got to create that kind of culture. You got to do a good job of making sure everybody understands, hey, look, it's not about me. It's about us and what we can do together. And, that's what good coaches do. They have teams that the sum of the parts is greater, than they are individually. And so that's what we want to get to. We want to have that kind of football team where, our guys, play better than we are, and our team is better than we should be. And, when we get to that point, that's when we know we're gonna have a chance to have a great team.
Sonny Dykes, head coach at TCU. I'm not suggesting that there's any decision to be made by the quarterbacks you have as far as what they look at. But with now this thing called the transfer portal, and with a position that might be up for grabs, or at least the competition is very much a heavy dose of you have to wait and see. Baylor has the same thing perhaps going on, even with the returning starter as well. How do you juggle that, or does that come into play with May 1st coming up, the transfer deadline and all that? Is that now something you got to kind of juggle competition differently after the spring?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's something you have to manage much differently now than you've had to in the past. I mean, a big part of your job now is just recruiting your current players, making sure that they understand your vision for them and how they're going to fit into the program and what their future holds and what you think about them. And I think that's why communication, between coaches and players is so important. It's really, really important to young people to know that, hey, look, we appreciate what you're doing. Here's what we see you. Here's what we think you can become. Here's the plan for you to become that. And I think if they get those things, then typically they're going to be comfortable, assuming they're having a good experience where they are. And that's our job, is to do a good job, again, communicating with those young men and making sure that they see the vision that we have for them, and they know that they can get there, and we give them tools to get there. And so, the quarterback spot's not any different than anything else. I mean, typically those guys have a pretty good feeling about who's leading and who's behind and all that. But as I said, those things change very quickly. And the summer, in my estimation, and my belief, is so important to that position. How much time do they spend with the receivers on their own, throwing and catching? And, who do those guys really begin to trust and believe in? Because, that's so, so important. That quarterback has got to be a leader in your program. It's got to be somebody that everybody on the team believes in when times get tough. And, you're behind and you have to make plays and you got to do the right thing and you got to do the hard thing over and over again. They have to believe that guy can get it done. And so, those competitions will take time to sort out. And, I think that both the quarterbacks feel good about their opportunities, to win the job. And, and then we have some young guys that are biting on their heels as well. So we feel like we're in pretty good shape at that position.
What is the difference in recruiting a player on your own team than recruiting a kid when he's in high school, especially when you are coming in and that initial shock of the coach I came here to play for is gone. There's a different guy now, and there's a lot of emotions flying around about that, valid or not, because you just kind of feel a bunch of things when you get that news.
Yeah, look, that's hard for young people. It really is. I mean, change is always tough for everybody, and especially when another group has recruited you. And, what happened with us, we lost some D linemen to the transfer portal because we went from a 4-down scheme to a 3-down scheme. And so there were some defensive ends that felt like that were here before that felt like they probably didn't have a role in our defense. And, I wish they would have gone through spring because I think they would have realized, okay, look, this is, there's going to be a role for me in this defense. Our D coordinator, Joe Gillespie, does such a great job of doing that, finding things that guys can do and developing those strengths and letting them play to those strengths and creating opportunities for players to get on the field and to play with those skills that they have. But that's part of college football today. That's part of, the world we live in. And, I've always believed that players ought to have opportunities to move on if that's what they want to do and if they think it's going to be the best decision for them. The thing that I hope that happens is, I hope that we communicate with the players well enough and they trust us enough to where they say, look, we're going to put our faith in you. It may not look great for me right now, but I know that if I work hard and I do what I'm supposed to do every day and, that I can develop into something that's going to help our football team. And so you hope that they have that attitude, and most of them do. And those that don't, you wish them the best and try to focus on the guys that you have.
Coach, I was just curious during the offseason. I mean, obviously you're a guy who loves football. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. But your offseason, when you're kind of looking around, do you mostly just watch your own teams? Do you watch other teams? Do you watch kind of what the new trends are? Sort of how do you absorb football and I guess stay continuously learning even though you already know quite a bit?
Yeah, I think you're always trying to learn and stay ahead and find stuff that fits your system. The other thing I try to do is look at teams maybe that are a little challenged as far as personnel goes, but still, put up great numbers. Those teams to me are the ones that are a lot more fun to study than some of the other teams that are really, really talented at every position. So you look at a team like Wake Forest, for example, they don't have a lot of guys that are going to be high NFL draft picks or that type of thing, but they always do a great job moving the football. They're very creative. They do things that to keep people off balance and put their players in situations to be really successful. So, we'll look at teams like that. We'll look at some tape in the NFL, some of the teams that match our philosophy a little bit, and see some of the things that they're doing. Maybe teams like the 49ers and some of the things they're doing in the run game, and the Rams, with play action passes and boots, that type of thing. And so, we're always trying to look around, trying to improve on what we're doing and get more efficient at doing it. And one of the things that we talk about a lot as well is, how do we practice? Let's try to maximize every single opportunity to get better in practice, make sure we're getting the right amount of work, and make sure we're not overworking our guys, but let's have as physical practices as we can without putting players in harm's way. So, there's always tweaks that you have to make, and we're always, every single day, we're talking about ways to get better, ways to improve our roster, ways to improve, the development of our players, again, strength and conditioning, just all the things, we're constantly tinkering with and making adjustments to fit our players and what we have. So it never really stops. And obviously part of that, the biggest part of that's recruiting, going out and selling our program to young people and getting guys comfortable with us and our vision for them as players.
Sonny, one more question, if you don't mind. It appeared as if the Big 12 was starting to kind of turn towards more of a conference that was relying on defense with Matt Campbell at Iowa State, what Dave Aranda's doing at Baylor, even what the person who you succeeded at TCU or who you replaced at TCU for the longest of time, but not as much recently. Do you see it now flipping back to the days of hair on fire with what you now bring to TCU and Kitley at Texas Tech, among others?
I don't think so. I mean, I think if you look last year, and I think this is pretty common across most conferences. You look at the Big 12 last year, the two best defenses in the league were Baylor and Oklahoma State. And those two teams played in the championship game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's when you look at the SEC, look at Georgia and Alabama, probably the two best defensive teams in the league. So it just shows you at the end of the day, you got to play defense. You have to have a team that can get stops. You have to have a great defense, in my opinion, to win a championship. I just think you have to. And so, for us, we went out and hired, I think one of the best defensive coordinators in college football, Joe Gillespie. Mm-hmm. Played against him 4 years when he was at Tulsa. Love what they do. Love their approach. Again, I felt like he was one of those coaches that got more out of his players than a lot of other people did. And his guys, played a hard-nosed brand of football that's really a testament to his personality and his coaching style. And so really excited about that hire, what he brought to us this spring, what he's going to bring to our program moving forward. I think he's a really smart guy. I love what we do from a scheme standpoint, but just love the way he coaches football. He's a kids first coach, wants to always do what's right for the players, and really love his approach, and I think it's going to pay dividends for us in the future.
Thank you very much, Sonny. Thanks for your time, Coach.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Sonny Dykes, head football coach at TCU, at Coach Sonny Dykes on Twitter. Joe Gillespie, of course, a high school coach in Texas for quite some time, joined Philip Montgomery at Tulsa, and now, as Coach Dykes mentioned, joins him on staff at TCU. They changed from the 4-3 that they used forever to a 3-4. Brian Estridge, voice of TCU, said one of the things they have to wonder is if going to the 3-4, do they have enough oomph, enough beef to hold up against some team trying to pound them with the running game. But overall, he said that, the quarterback competition will just take time to iron itself out, and that's what Coach Dykes said as well.
Okay, this is a great comment and question from Gary Lewis on the chat. I like Dykes. I hope they build just a serviceable defense. Asking you, was Spike Dykes as chill as Sonny is or different? I would not describe, and I met Coach Dykes well after he was coaching. He was retired. It was Texas Sports Hall of Fame stuff, and I would not describe him as chill. I mean, he was jovial.
You're talking about Spike
Dykes, yeah.
No, I would. He kind of a throwback old coach. He sounded like a coach, looked like a coach. I
mean, he was not. There are coaches who are high strung to a fault, and that was not Spike Dykes at all.
No,
but
he's just good old country boy.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he and Emery Ballard and those guys from the West Texas. Very relaxed by comparison to others. And Spike Dykes was just funny. I mean, he was just a really funny guy.
Hell of a high school
jovial,
coach. Then became at Texas Tech. Yeah, he was their Grant Taft for the longest of time at Texas Tech.
Well, I'm interested to see the Big 12 this year. I really am. You can say that any year that you want to, but I mean, in particular, you look at Sonny Dykes there now. He hires Garrett Riley, to run the offense, and then Gillespie with the defense. They got this quarterback decision upcoming. They got, some pretty good skill guys, Quentin Johnson and Kendry Miller, and I know they brought some others in. Defense, obviously, it's going to be the first TCU defense sans Gary Patterson because he was still coaching, last year. We know he was coaching up in Baylor Week. We know that for a fact. But, really without Patterson wholesale defensively. So, yeah, they're a unique team that I don't really know where to peg just yet. But I feel kind of that way with Iowa State. They could be much better than last year, surprisingly, even though they lost a lot, Texas could be a big step better. Oklahoma could be better. But then again, all these teams could be worse, too. I just think it's going to, there's been so many changes coaching-wise, and then you throw the transfer portal into it. And it's not just coaches changing, but it's styles changing. And so it's interesting to hear him say that, defense still wins championships and all of that. And I agree with that. I'd rather have Dave Aranda's defense than just about anybody's offense, and Ron Roberts' defense as well. But I do think there's going to be a bit more firepower. I do think that offenses are going to have to be able to score. That goes without saying, but you know what I mean. They're going to have to be able to move the football and put points on the board, and maybe in some games have to match, rather than relying on getting up by 2 scores and being able to,
winning 14-10, those days are pretty much done.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. There's a lot of you who have answered questions we had about some things you thought from what you watched during spring drills, and also, of course, college football. Some of you reacting to the segment with TCU and Sonny Dykes and our questions about the Big 12. First of all, thanks to Mark Cohen at TCU for setting that up with us with Sonny Dykes. When